Welcome to Dungeon Master Talk, the podcast for Dungeon Masters by Dungeon Masters. I am Dungeon Master Kyle, and with me today, as always, is...
Dungeon Master Shea. How are you, Kyle?
I'm doing good. How about yourself, Shea?
It's doing pretty good, man. The weather's starting to lighten up, so it's not, Arctic temperatures in the Midwest, so that's, always great.
Yep, for now. It's going to dip again, because it can't decide.
True, because we do get snow in June, but that's neither here nor there. Today is D&D Day.
It is D&D Day.
Which makes me really excited, so...
Woo! All right, Shea, so today, what are we talking about?
Let's jump right into alignment. And we're not talking about the alignment on your vehicle.
Ah, dang it.
I know. I always think it's the one thing, but it's always the other thing.
I prepared entirely wrong. I was here to talk about, the headlight test. And how you can tell if you're drifting left and right, and the importance of checking your tire pressure first before you wasted the money.
Well, first of all, if you don't have your summer air in yet, you should probably change that. And if your blinker fluid is low, definitely change that, because that will definitely help in your alignment.
And always make sure that you buy elbow grease.
Always.
Otherwise, you can't crank hard.
And if you don't have a 710 cap, you should probably get one of those also.
Listeners out there, before you go Google any of that, that's Shea and I just having fun saying all the fake things that we used to hear back in with the old days when we were young.
Better yet, if you want to test and see if we're right, go to your local auto body store and see if they have that stuff in stock. Because chances are they probably do.
But do make sure that you Google first and know that we are in fact telling you the truth now when we say you don't need to do all that. It's all fake. Love us anyway. So, alignment. Listeners, you may be like, hey, you guys are already repeating yourselves. It's already season 2. Shea and I wanted to do is come back around on alignment and actually give it the time of a full conversation, because there's a lot that goes into role-playing your characters, and alignment is really that base. I don't even want to say foundation, but it's like the cornerstone of your character. There we go. I figured out backstory is the foundation, but alignment's really the cornerstone, because from there, things like your deity alignment is driven from that. Some deities demand a certain alignment set, and then that should fuel that character's base behavior when they're interacting with the party, when they're interacting with NPCs. And we've talked in the past that it can be fluid, but then what does changing it really impact? And how does that impact the character? And just kind of tips and tricks for you, the DM, to watch that, work with your player characters, and just help really drive that into your story more than just, we did an all goods campaign. There's so much more to it than that. So we want to help you, the DM, really dive in deep and kind of flush this out. So it's not this thing that mattered way back in session 0 when we were making characters and never again after.
Right. So I think when you're trying to do alignment, like you were saying, it borders on a few different factors. If your character has a religious tint to it, like a paladin, a cleric, a warlock can have a deity. Even a sorcerer could have a deity. There's a lot of different things that go into that. So like you said, you have to kind of align yourself to what the particular deity is that you're subscribing to. But if you're not going to be a more alignment sided, I guess if you want to say that, and you're going to try and play that neutral ground, that's kind of a thing in and of itself.
Exactly.
Because neutral, even in the whole scheme of things, there's technically 9 different categories of alignments.
Nueve.
Let's start with the 3 different types, and then we'll kind of break that down a little bit. So in each type, you have 3 subcategories. You have the 3 main categories: good, neutral, and chaotic, right?
Yep.
Inside of those 3, you have lawful, you have neutral, and you have chaotic.
I think on the first 3, you listed chaotic instead of evil.
Sorry, evil, yes. And then and then it's lawful, neutral, chaotic. Yes.
Yep. Good, neutral, evil, lawful, neutral, chaotic.
Yes. Yes, that's what I meant. So technically you have 9 different sub-variants, basically, when you break it all down. And if, as you role play and you just find yourself naturally shifting that alignment, that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a player that just naturally shifts, let them go. You don't have to hold them to that, but if you have, I guess if you have certain parameters in your game, you might need to, Like if you're holding a heroes only campaign and one of your guys kind of starts drifting towards more of a
villainous
daredevil type, vigilante type, you might have to kind of rein that back in a little bit. But as a general rule of thumb, I don't like to do that because I want the player to make the decisions on the character, right?
Right, and it can simulate like real character growth. And because if you're looking at a lot of people when we're playing D&D, we want it to feel like a relatable-ish world. Obviously, it's fantastical. Everything is dialed up to 100. And that's where it's the unrelatable, because I don't know about you in my day-to-day life. I don't have to worry about spells being cast at me. But
you clearly don't work for the government, do you?
No.
But, just kidding.
With that in mind, and also keeping in mind good stories that you read, the characters don't have that straight linear path. It's often more wiggly, and it takes turns and it takes setbacks. And so sometimes when you're playing a player character, role-playing it out, maybe they have that impactful moment or that downtime where maybe their alignment did kind of flux for a bit. Maybe you were having an all-goods campaign. This one character went a little anti-hero for a while as they were adjusting something. You brought him back. If it works in character, and it's not just, for the memes, unless like that's your party. If that's your campaign and your campaign is literally for the memes campaign, meme.dnd, then have at it. I think like that can be fun. Like, hey, this is where we're going to come blow off steams, or we're going to have some laughs. If you're trying to really dive into that collaborative storytelling, I think my rule on my campaign, and different for everybody's campaign, but in mine, if it logically makes sense, if it fits within the confines of the world that we've built together, we can go for it. Now, if somebody's character just out of the blue, they all along were lawful good, and they were enforcing it, and lawful good, and then out of the blue one session, they're like, I killed that guy. I'd be like, what? Do we need to sidebar? What's going on here? Like, is this really what your character do? And even at that, I struggle because I don't want to take that reign from the player ever.
Yeah.
But if it's like, oh, okay, how'd we get here? What about this situation for your character makes you feel like this is what they do?
You're nicer than me. I would have been like, you mad, bro? Like, you mad? You good?
It truly has to be a character break. Like,
yeah,
for me, but hey, what's up? Because my natural assumption is that my players know their character better than I do. Because outside of game time, I think about the campaign and the world and the NPCs. But outside of game time, they're thinking about their character. They're thinking about the things that happen to their character, the things that their character wants, the things that they hope to do, what they're going to do next session.
Yep.
The amount of time that they think as their character and for their character just dwarfs by default what I can for their character.
Yep.
So I'm never going to prescribe it. But I have, on more than one occasion, talked to my players about their alignment and say like, hey, it says on your sheet you're lawful good or neutral good, but let's talk about some of the stuff you've been doing. I don't know if this alignment's accurate anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe we've evolved. And so should we shift it to match a character? And for most of my party, their alignment, it doesn't change the game mechanics for them. We had a cleric. He unfortunately was not able to continue playing with us. His would have mattered. But for the rest of my party, I don't believe... Well, I think it mattered for yours, Shea, because you had an alignment to a deity, and I don't think it would actually change what spells you had, but it would have changed the relationship to the deity.
Oh, are you talking about with Thunder?
No, with Dakar.
Right. Are you talking about when Thunder passed?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that because like your alignment for a little bit didn't line up.
Yeah. With
your deities, and then like it was an arc for your character, a little kind of sub theme of like your deity continuing trying to speak to you and walk you back.
Yep.
And it like that was fun, but it fit your character, so we went with it. So you're like, technically speaking. You're not really following your deity anymore, but also it's like, hey, that's kind of fun to explore. Like this, can he rebuild that bridge with you?
Yeah, and I think from Dakar's side, it was one of those things like he was trying to walk that bridge back to his deity at the same time because like all of the things that he knew about his deity he still held dear. He still held true to that, but he was questioning them so hard. Like he was like really putting the pressure on his deity to say, okay, prove it, and in a little sub story that I wrote for kind of this little hiatus that we had, I kind of answered some of those questions, but even now he's still he's not pushing back as hard, but he's still pushing on those a little bit in that respect. So let me throw a little curveball in this here.
Absolutely.
What if you have a divided party in alignments? So for example, like I legitimately have a chaotic neutral and I have a chaotic good in my party, but the rest of them are either neutral or lawful neutral. Some goods, but kind of more in the neutral. So I think it's one of those things where it can be a really fun dichotomy, if you want to call it that, when you have the angel and the devil in your party and they have to kind of argue with each other to kind of figure out how they're going to do things. And then the guy that's kind of playing neutral is just kind of the guy in the middle, like, I don't know. Get the bad guy. No, don't get the bad guy. Get the bad guy. There's just this like dichotomy that naturally happens in the group. And it's just really fun to watch that manifest as they try to figure out, like, what do we do with this prisoner? Is this a job that we need to take for the better of the people? Or are we just doing it because we want to be awesome and stroke our own egos? Like, what's the whole motive for doing the next plot? What's the whole point in this campaign?
Yep.
Or in one of the shows that you and I like to listen to, like the wizard started off as a necromancer.
Yep.
But he didn't play him as a necromancer right off the bat. He kind of like let him...
Faked it.
He faked it, yeah.
Gaslit a little bit.
Yeah, and then there was like
It was a big deal when it came out. I loved how that role played out.
Yes. And like the whole party was like, "You're what?"
Yep.
And like there was a real internal struggle in the party because they did not know how to. They didn't know how to either embrace him or take him out. Well, they actually tried to do that, but I'm not going to ruin the story for you.
Hope everyone listens to it.
Yeah, there was a serious like fight that happened in trying to figure out if they can accept this person or not, now that they know the true person in their party.
Yeah, so if my party's pretty interesting. I have a lawful good, a neutral good. No, I think he's neutral now. I have a lawful good, a neutral, a chaotic neutral, a lawful evil, and a neutral good. Trying to remember what yours was. And I
think it was lawful neutral.
Yeah, I think you were lawful neutral. And it was a really interesting dichotomy because it started off as they were all in it for the money.
Mm-hmm.
For wildly different reasons, but they're all in it for the money. And then it became this giant world plot and they were just kind of swept up in it for a bit. And then it became this like mutual understanding of, hey, we perform well as a group. It's mutually beneficial to each of us as a group.
Right.
And the lawful evil member kept it like he's done a fantastic job of keeping his motives hush hush for multiple years of real lifetime. And it's amounted to several months of in-game time. Our real life time to game time ratio is wild to think about. But to me, it's amazing how the lawful evil player is able to take the decisions of the lawful good player, which, these two are, same lawfulness where they both are going to follow essentially the letter of the law, but the lawful evil is going to manipulate that.
Yep.
And twist things for his gain, and the lawful good one's looking to enforce it. And it's amazing to me how much the lawful evil one is able to use the decisions made by the lawful good player to fuel his ultimate goals and his self-ambition. And it's also amazing to me, like the kind of wide spectrum that the neutral players have taken, where it's like, I've talked to my neutral player before about like, hey, more often than not, you're siding with the good side. Are you sure you're not neutral good? And he was like, he came back to me. He was like, well, yeah, I've been siding with the good stuff because that's still been what's been beneficial to my character. And it was the path of least resistance for him because it was the majority of the party's decision. And so just who he is at his core, he's not going to go against that.
Makes sense.
And so I was like, all right, then keep it. It's been really fun for me to watch as a DM. I feel wildly out of control with it because I planned this campaign for an all goods, and we now have more not good, like counting the neutrals, than goods. And so when I wrote this stuff out years ago now for me, what we're currently, we're actually now into stuff I wrote last year. So I started to kind of prep it a little bit better for me. But it used to be, all right, day of, what do I do if the not good players just chuck all this out the window? And that's been a lot of my advice of like, plan the world more than the story. But it's a fun change. I think, Shea, to help the players, we've been to help the listeners, the fellow DMs, we've been talking a lot about our experience with it. But I think it would be kind of good if we dive into like the alignment combinations and give like, obviously the books give descriptions and it's good to read those. And you can Google stuff online. And we've done this to a little bit like we talked about Joker being chaotic evil. And we've talked about like different pop culture characters and what we thought their alignment would be in the past. But maybe we give like a quick our words of it and then how we try to like work that in our campaigns if we have a story for it. There's a couple alignments I honestly have not played with yet from players. Okay.
So let's see. So give like an example of each like alignment type and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, like our phrasing of it, not reading from, because I know we could both reach over and grab the player's handbook and we could read that. I don't think that's beneficial to the listeners. Listeners, if you want this to turn into us reading the books, if you guys,
I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about the Wizards of the Coast lawyers that would come over and be like, "Hey, you can't do that.
Quit giving away our stuff for free."
I mean, no comment.
Yeah, and this is just to lay the groundwork, so our advice kind of has roots a little bit.
So probably a lot of mine are going to be superhero based and very superficial superheroes because I'm not like huge into like comics.
Oh, I think that's fine. I think you'll be with the majority there.
Probably. And if you guys find a better one, I would love to hear it. So please let us know in the social medias and at our email that we'll give to you at the end of the show. So let's start from the top. For me, lawful good is Captain America. Straight up.
Yep.
Like he is the embodiment of everything by the law, for the good, like the most altruistic type character.
Yep.
Let's see. Neutral good.
I think this is like Superman, right? It's good for the sake of good.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's actually the law or not, he doesn't really care. This is the right thing.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's always been my example.
Chaotic good?
You can disagree. That's fine.
I have a hot take. Chaotic good, Tony Stark.
I can see it. Good from his point of view.
Because he will do it the way he wants to do it. And generally it'll be for the good of the people. But mostly it's for himself.
Chaotic good has always been the one that in my mind I struggled with the most until you said that just now. Because it's just like the chaotic side is kind of like the... You know, at my whim.
Yes.
From a good place. I mean well.
I'm thankful to have a great military contract. The fact that they blow each other up with it, that's just a side effect.
Yeah, and I think he did ultimately kind of turn anti-military and stuff. But I still think he went anti-military and his answer to it was to go blow it up with his new weapons. So that's pretty chaotic.
As long as you use my new weapons, you're good. All right, lawful neutral. What do you think?
Lawful neutral is like true. It's not like the law for the purpose of the good of the people. It's the law for the sake of the law. And I think a superhero that represents this to me is, I kind of had one in my mind and then I made myself disagree with myself in my head. I had an internal argument, but the one I was gonna say was Cyclops.
Okay.
And what I'm thinking about for Cyclops here is not for avid comic book readers. I'm not talking about the more modern Cyclops since House of M. I'm talking about a more traditional view of Cyclops, thinking of like the 90s X-Men TV show. The argument could be made that he should be more of like the neutral good one, but like there was times that he was like, we can't do this. This is not the X-Men way, even though doing that would have been the right thing to do.
Yeah.
They let the bad guys get away at times because it's like, we are X-Men. We don't do that. And so he put what that rule was, those confines, sometimes ahead of what was the right thing to do, especially in the eyes of the rest of the team.
You know, and kind of to slightly backtrack, because to me, like, lawful neutral and chaotic good are kind of, to me, they're kind of almost interwoven. There's a lot of similarities between both. I almost wonder if, like, because for me, Black Widow came to mind for lawful neutral.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. This is my assignment. I don't care who's behind the assignment. This is my assignment. I'm killing this person because they told me to. I don't care.
Right. Right. Like, that's my mark. Chaotic good, another one that kind of came to my mind was Thor, maybe?
I can see where you're coming from there. I think, like, also for chaotic good, you can also kind of think of Wolverine.
Yeah.
Because he's aligned good. He's out for, again, not enforcing a law. He doesn't really care about the law at all. But he's going to protect mutants with his murder clause. And
Batman, maybe? Might be in there.
Yeah, Batman, I honestly always think of him as lawful good. Just because he has his set of rules he will not break.
Fair.
And it's not the law on his lawful good is not the law as defined by a government. It's his rules.
That's true. Okay, that makes sense.
But then that's also kind of, I fight myself on that because it's like, well, isn't that the definition of neutral good?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe Batman's more neutral good. And that's, I think, like, this discussion is honestly proving, I want to get to the evil side because it gets more fun.
Right.
Because it gets harder. But this is kind of showing the point of, like, there is this borderline between them. While existing, it's not super thick. It's not this, there's, like, aspects of, there's the base good side, the base neutral side, the base evil side. So then there's going to be similarities between lawful good, neutral good, and chaotic good.
Yeah.
To me, like, the ones, because you were saying, like, chaotic, like, lawful evil and chaotic good, you feel like, no, lawful evil and chaotic neutral, I think you said, bleed a lot.
Lawful neutral and chaotic good.
And chaotic good. The one that's hard for me is chaotic good and neutral good. Because, like, I have those ones, to me, it feels like there's a decent amount of crossover where it's like good for the sake of good and good for the sake of my current train of thought.
I think the differentiate, like you had referred to, like, if it's chaotic good, it might be more of a moral system, like an internal moral system, versus like a neutral thing might be more of like the law of the land or kind of the group's law versus like an internal law.
Yeah, so a chaotic good is like self-driven view of good.
Yeah.
Neutral good is like the perceived mass, but not the letter of the law. And because we've seen, especially in American culture, we've seen those, and I'm sure in others, but I'm American, so I'm
sure
limited view. And so there's definitely been times when we're like, hey, the law says this, but we think this is actually right.
Right, right. You know, maybe to throw some deities out there too, like Bahamut, god of justice, would be a lawful good deity.
I think whenever you're justice inclined, it's just like, I mean, obviously, hold
on a second. Don't wait till we get to lawful evil.
I know.
Wait till we get to lawful evil.
I know.
Like chaotic good to me could be like Corellon, who is like the god of the arts and god of the Fae. You know, where I picture that. Lawful neutral could be like Shantaea, who is a goddess of like agriculture and like fertility.
Yep.
Mostly good things, but you know, it's not necessarily like justice or like, it's just more of kind of it is what it is kind of thing.
Yep.
True neutral. This one is really hard.
True neutral is always hard for me.
Well, and I think it's really hard for players to stay true neutral the entire time.
Yeah, if they tend to bleed a little one way.
Yeah, there's always a check and balance somewhere.
Yep.
Like if one good thing happens, they have to either offset that with a bad thing, or they have to vice versa. If something evil happens, they have to offset the same amount in the good side. So like they have to really stay on that fence.
Yep.
So hard.
Well, and I've seen players, and I've liked this take on it. Like neutral is like truly, I am here for me. If it's the good side's good for me, fine. If the bad side's what's good for me, fine. It's, I'm literally here. My goal is to make money and not die. And as long as I'm making money and I'm not dying, I'm good with whatever we're doing.
I'm here to chew bubblegum and kick butt. And I'm all out of bubblegum. Bing, ding, 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 ding.
Exactly. And I've seen that take on it, and I think that that's fun. The take that I've done in the campaign I'm currently running for Neutral is I have a deity who's literally in charge of my pantheon of gods, that she is neutral. And literally she oversees the balance. Her goal in life is to keep the powers of good across all the varieties of good, and the powers of evil across all the varieties of evil are equal matched. Mm-hmm. And that no one side is currently defeating the other side. And that's her life's purpose. And so if the bad guys get stronger, she'll try to make the good guys stronger. But then if the good guys get stronger, she'll try to make the bad guys stronger or nerf the good guys. And so that's literally she's the balance. She's like a video game company trying to patch the heroes in the game so that everybody has a good experience. And that's been kind of like my cheat code into the game to help help both sides out at times.
All right. So chaotic neutral. I don't know if we really touched on that one yet.
We haven't yet.
Okay. Chaotic neutral.
I think this is a hard one.
Hulk?
Sorry,
guys. I am on a huge Marvel kick, and that's really the only point of reference I have right now, other than Disney. So
I think Lobo on the DC side would probably be the closest.
Okay.
If you don't know Lobo, he's a really fun character. He's the main man, is his catchphrase. I like Hulk though as an example because Hulk is definitely chaotic. Whatever he's angry at the moment has his focus. So that could be a good guy, that could be a bad guy. It's just literally where his anger points him. Although in more modern tellings, they've painted him more to the good side just because they want him on the Avengers. That's what sells the movie tickets.
Well, the good guys need a big bruiser that they can actually do something, when the bad guys come up too. So what's and forgive me, my DC knowledge is kind of limited. Batman's apprentice that goes vigilante.
Red Hood?
Red Hood, yes. Would you view him as chaotic neutral, maybe?
Maybe. His arc is fun.
To me, he seems like a little bit under the table. Like he'll get stuff done kind of for the altruistic of the good of people, but he has his own, maybe not necessarily kosher ways of doing things.
Yeah, I think chaotic neutral is probably his ultimate alignment. He definitely gets introduced as more of a lawful evil. He's twisting the law and Batman's rules against him, and then he becomes good because he learns that what he thought was true was not true, and he was also, that was the writer's reason. It was really he was way too popular of a character when introduced to leave on the evil side of the line, and so he gets to become a good guy. So I think chaotic neutral is probably where, although he maybe actually he does still, he aims to wound, he never kills now because he follows Batman's rule on that, although he whines about it consistently.
Yes.
So, I think I'd leave him in that chaotic neutral, but I kind of see, depending on the writer, he might fall more under neutral.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to write for chaotic neutral, it really is. Because it's, what makes, the difference. The lawful one, it's okay, they're lawful and neutral. The law is going to be their defining trait. Neutral, they're all in it for themselves. The chaotic neutral, chaos is this element of they're truly unpredictable, but they don't have a driving nature that's going to pull them one way or another. So it becomes very difficult to consistently write for in like the sense of comics or TV show or movie.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of a deity from D&D off the top of my head.
You're better at the D&D official deities than I am.
I'm not thinking one off the top of my head. So
listeners, hit us up because I'm sure.
Yeah, I bet you guys are following along in your PHB and you can tell me what the right answer is.
Or somebody like if like you've played. So my favorite thing to do in D&D is create new gods for each story to change up the world and change up the interactions. And sure, I'm giving an experience that my players haven't had before, which you can do with the official D&D gods, and it allows you to adapt their official story modules easier if you do that. So there's definitely benefits. But I'd be willing to bet that there's listeners that have played in that world a lot or DM'd in that world a lot that you're thinking, like, how have you guys not mentioned these 5 gods yet?
You're right.
Let us know in the comments. Like, we would love to hear it. Email. You can DM us on Instagram, all that stuff. We'll let you know at the end how to get a hold of us.
Oh, I just thought about this. Cord is a true neutral.
So I miss who you said there.
Cord.
Okay.
He's I think god of strength, I think it is. And if I remember right, he is true neutral.
Probably good that strength wasn't leaning evil or good, because that would make that side.
Wouldn't it though? Like
unfair. No strong people can be on our team.
Let's see. Arathis coming to mind, goddess of civilization. She's probably like neutral good.
There you go.
I would say some like either lawful neutral or neutral good.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
I don't know this D&D very well to help out, so my bad.
And I'm just kind of pulling at straws from some of them. Raven Queen, I could see as a lawful neutral, because she handles the graves.
Okay.
One of the goddesses of death, I should say. Trying to think off the top of my head.
Yep.
Yeah, chaotic neutral. I'm not pulling one up for.
In the campaign that I built, the one so I have 12 deities, but I actually didn't hit every alignment combination.
Right.
For the gods. That was honestly on purpose when I was making it, to allow there to be like this sense of like there's gaps in the world at the core. One that I intentionally left out was chaotic neutral because of its like difficulty to write for consistently. It's like I could do this in a couple like confined sessions, but then tracking that across the play of the world is difficult.
Yeah.
So evil side, evil neutral. So evil for the like sake of evil, basically.
Okay.
Neutral good is the understanding of good from the whole, and its opposite would be the understanding of evil from the whole.
Yeah.
And so this to me is like the purest representation, evil for the sake of it, because chaotic evil is like evil for the sake of self, right? It's like so at least then like, even though it's chaos and it's hard to map because like nobody else thinks the way you do, ultimately you have a driving motive, it's you. But the the evil neutral, you really don't have that. And so it's like, what is really the worst thing that can be done here?
Yeah.
So to me, that in DC, that's like Apocalypse.
Okay.
Oddly, in Marvel, that's Apocalypse. Of course, in DC, I'm talking Darkseid and his world of Apocalypse, but it's like really like everything about the world of Apocalypse and the opposite of the New Gods.
Mm-hmm.
It's like evil for the sake of evil. Like they torture for the sake of torture. And then Apocalypse on Marvel, maybe the more I think about it, maybe he's not, because he has a core purpose he's driving for. He wants purely the strong, the most deserving of life in his view to survive. But that causes him to do just truly evil things. Maybe more of a Mr. Sinister than would be a better representative for Marvel. Or are you thinking of anyone? I'm also kind of thinking of Green Goblin.
Green Goblin could be a good one. D&D wise, I'm thinking of evil, like neutral evil, probably like Vecna, god of secrets. You know, that could go either way. I mean, secrets for good side and bad side. Well, I guess he might be more of a chaotic neutral, not or chaotic, evil or neutral, because
chaotic neutral.
Okay, good. Now we got that figured out.
Chaotic evil we've hit on before. It's like your Joker, Carnage from Marvel.
Yep.
Trying to think of another example in like media that's not superhero. I drive back to superheroes a lot.
Mostly just Marvel for me.
Yeah, this is what was on TV when we were kids.
So I'm thinking like Grumsh in D&D. So he's the god of demons. And basically he just wants, or Bane, who is like god of slaughter, Grumsh, god of carnage, just smash and bash, leave nothing left.
Yeah, and it's for his enjoyment.
Basically, yeah. The ones that I actually kind of am intrigued by are villains like Dr. Freeze. Or Mr. Freeze, sorry. Where he's ultimately he's not trying to be a bad guy, but the methods that he uses cause him to kind of take that turn to become evil.
Yep.
And so he ends up ultimately being a bad guy. D&D wise is Asmodeus. And the reason I say it for lawful evil, because he follows his law to a T. The problem is that is the most evil law you can think of.
Yep.
And everything works. And here's the thing, he doesn't lie to you.
Yep.
But it's so twisted that you still fall for it.
I always depict lawful evil as highly intelligent at its core. Because, like, it's also the one that I think of right offhand is Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
He's a amazing representation of it. It's all like Doc Ock in Marvel as well.
Loki, maybe?
I always think of Loki as, even though he is highly intelligent and he does twist the words, I always think of him more as chaotic evil and chaotic neutral when he's not on the pure evil side.
Yeah.
Because, like, he has his purpose. He wants to rule over all. But he also lets his pure hatred of certain people, namely Thor, drive him away from his plan a lot of the time. And he'll betray, like, if he's trying to take down Thor, but it's going to benefit somebody else, like the Enchantress, he'll switch sides on a heartbeat to ensure that Enchantress doesn't get his outcome.
Yep.
And so it's, whereas if he was lawful evil, he would ensure that Enchantress was working for him ultimately and didn't realize it.
Yeah.
There's depictions of him that I think fit that lawful evil. Like, I think the MCU Loki slides more into that lawful evil, maybe until he ultimately changes side.
Yeah.
But I think, like, because of the way that he was twisting the rules on stuff, using Asgard law to banish Thor, but then also did not use the law to take the throne. He impersonated his dad instead. Giving away MCU, so hopefully they don't find us. But this is like a decade old now. Yeah, I'm sitting between two bookshelves of comic books. I have my back to another bookshelf of comic books, listeners. So yeah, it's hard for me to not say things in terms of superheroes. It's just a big part of my life. I love talking about it. I don't purchase them weekly like I once did because, wow, that takes a lot of money.
True.
But it's kind of a core aspect of me.
So let me land this plane real quick just to kind of bring this together. How is a DM, how do you facilitate the alignments? What is your alignment versus, like, how do you foster that development in the game?
I think a big part of it is you can't prescribe the outcomes, because if you're allowing for all alignment possibilities in your campaign, you can't prescribe the outcomes.
Yep.
Because if you do that, you're going to rob an alignment's outcome from them. When my party stopped being all good, or mostly good.
Yep.
Our rogue was the first one to deviate out. That drastically affected how I treated the story, because he multiple times ruined my plans, and not in the funny way of like, oh, I had an ambush planned and my druid cast a spell that I forgot existed and it made the ambush impossible. But from oh no, I'm throwing away so many notes. Like, it's a good thing we have a month until we play again, because it's going to take me a month to rectify this. He killed a character that DMs are going to hear me say this, and this is going to be hard for you to rectify. He killed a character that in my notes was unkillable. But how he did it, I could not deny him. The dice also sided with him and not with me.
It's true.
And I know, like, well, don't let your character get in that scenario. But again, I wrote this for all good. So the fact that they captured him, if they're all good and he's captured, he gave himself over willingly, he's safe, right? I have a player who's not good now. He's not safe.
Yep.
I thought I was safe because I had, at that point in time, 2 lawful good characters that were not going to let anything bad happen to this captured bad guy. But then my lawful evil player goes, oh no, if we take him back, he will expose me. And all my plans are ruined. So he manipulated the party into getting him a shot at it, where he was enough alone that he could walk up and do this under the guise of, oh, I misunderstood what you guys told me to do. You said take care of him, so I took care of him. And Oh no, I'm throwing out mountains worth of mountains worth of story that I've planned around this guy, how he was going to drive the next few major story plots from the information he was going to give. Mm-hmm. And nope. So you have to stop prescribing the outcomes. And my next bit of advice is you have to then make variety in the alignments that they interact with. So there can be good aligned characters that their interests don't align with the party. So they're also good. They're working for the good forces of the world, but they're not friends to the party. Then there can also be fellow evildoers, and this is really easy to do because evil is a lot easier to bake into that selfishness and not feel like you're tossing everything else out the window. Mm-hmm. But like when they come up with another evildoer to ensure that like, hey, this other character is evil, but maybe not enough outright evil for the party to like attack on sight, or they're able to make these alliances with these evil aligned characters and giving that opportunity for the evil aligned characters to maybe pull the wool for a little bit, but not by withholding information from your good characters that they should have access to. So it is a balance. Your note taking is going to explode with this a little bit because you're going to have to start tracking what's secret, what's known to everyone, what's known to just this player, so that you, the DM, don't spoil your lawful evil character's plans when you're giving a recap. I find myself getting very intrigued by what the like neutral character has going or the lawful evil character has going that the rest of the party isn't aware of. And so it's hard not to recap that when it's what I keyed in onto most in the recording.
Yeah, I think for me, it's one of those things where really just in keeping it to one question to me, what would your character do?
Yep.
I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm not going to tell you how to feel. I'm not going to tell you like how or what you should do. My question to you is always going to be, how do you respond? How does your character respond? For example, saying you have that prisoner, if the fighter barbarian in our case just went and just split him 7 different ways from Sunday, okay, now we have to have a conversation because, like you said, the group decided one thing and he went off and did something else.
Yep.
Or let's just say, for sake of argument, the more evil, quote unquote, alignment guys in my party basically go and save a town all by themselves. Now, are they chaotic? Are they evil now, or are they starting to move kind of more towards the rest of the party? That's not for me to decide. Like you and I decided. Like I will ask you as the character, the PC, how do you respond?
Yep.
Now you kind of alluded to an evil campaign. The biggest thing for me, if you have an all evil campaign, you all have to have the same drive. Everybody has to have like kind of the same goal of like, am I just trying to not die? Am I trying to just make all the money I can? Am I trying to become like a massive crime lord?
Are we trying to take over the world, Pinky?
Yes, always. Dadgummit, you got
me. Goal accomplished.
Especially when you get started, whoever is kind of assigning your task, there has to kind of be this like quote unquote fear of God in them that says like, you do not do what I tell you to do, you will die. And if the task that I assign you to doesn't kill you, I will.
Yeah, like kind of an ultimate...
Like an ultimatum kind of thing, yeah.
I think it's hard for it's not impossible. I've heard of them being very successful. I've never played in one or DM'd one. But an all-evil campaign lasting for a super long time is something that I've heard a lot of DMs that I've talked to, not day-to-day, but regularly, struggle with, because it's oftentimes, for most people, that's not the stuff that comes naturally. It's a little bit more thought of like, well, what would be bad to do here? And it's maybe not first thought. It's from talking to those DMs, it's like, yeah, the first few sessions, it's real easy because it's fun. We're having laughs about it. Then we do something like, oh, well, that
got dark quick.
That kind of sucked to do, like I think almost all of our advice across now the more than a year that we've been doing this, almost 2, right? Or am I way off?
This is coming up on 2 in June.
Yeah. So, wow, time goes fast. A lot of our advice ultimately comes back to like that communication layer. This time it's not with the whole party.
Yeah.
It's communication layer with your player. In my opinion, you as a DM should never say to somebody, hey, I've been watching how you play and I'm changing your alignment.
Right.
It should be, hey, I'm just noticing these things lately. Your alignment says you're lawful evil, but you've done a few things that have definitely, to me, seemed lawful good. Is this on purpose? Is this something you want to keep pursuing?
Yeah.
Or was it just kind of like caught up in the moment stuff and we can ignore it? And because sometimes it truly is like, hey, I was having fun in the moment that everybody else was doing this. I was just caught up in the good feels and I did the lawful good. And other times it's like, yeah, I think this is like a character growth moment. They're exploring it. And then you can bake that into the campaign a little bit.
And I think at that point, you could just tell them, hey, check your alignment. If you want to change it, that's great. If not, just keep that in mind. Again, you're not telling them what to do. You're just saying, hey, I'm noticing, and you're going to do what you're going to do. And that, unless you're stepping over the boundaries that you and your party have set in day 1, session 0 of some like hardcore things, then that becomes a difficult player situation. And we've talked about that in length. But if it's just like within game, like people at the table are fine with what's going on, then have them check their alignment. If that's the road that character is going to go down, and then the party finds out, then there could be a big come to deity moment or whatever's going to happen there. But I think at the end of the day, letting the player really embrace what alignment they want to be. And I would be shocked if the average player, if you made it from beginning to end, does not change at least once, if not twice, on average per game. Like every character, at least once, if not twice, per campaign. That's just kind of my rough thought.
Yeah, I can't tell you the amount of times that when I was a player, I envisioned like, oh, this is this character's alignment. Then I went to roleplay them and I was like, no, it's not. Yeah, it's sometimes it's like, well, I envisioned this character as a lawful good, but then really the setting, like we just moved so far away from civilization that like that law aspect, they naturally faded away from it. Or sometimes it's like I envision them as chaotic good, but I'm really playing them as chaotic neutral. Like that good fell off hard.
Oh yeah.
As I was seeking them out. And it's that character discovery that's so much fun.
For sure.
All right. And we can hit more on that in like a version 3. So clearly, listeners, you can tell that Shea and I have a lot of thoughts on alignment. We love drawing alignment to the kind of entertainment world, what we see. Mm-hmm. And this is just something I think is so powerful about D&D, because if you want to play a superheroes campaign, you can, at D&D and games like D&D, you can have that superhero campaign. You can draw similarities to actual like superhero text out there. If you want to play a high fantasy, of course, that's when D&D innately writes for. If you want to play one that's a lot more real world focused, take out a lot of that fantastical, the alignment is still valid, and it's important that just that fluidity can be as fluid as your play group is comfortable with.
For sure.
Moving away from that, listeners, and this might be a kind of shorter run at this than is our norm, but that's because we spent longer on the advice. If you enjoyed this kind of format where we focused more on the advice and gave a little bit less time for the campaign, please let us know. Shea and I are constantly trying out new stuff, trying to find that balance between this world that we're building for the campaign and what we're going to leave behind the scenes for eventually if we put this together. Mm-hmm. And balancing that advice that is, of course, why we started the podcast to begin with. So let us know.
Last time on Dungeon Master Talk.
Woo!
Yeah, I know. It's got to keep practicing that. So we talked about how the characters had come back, Balden had escaped, talked about how the granddaughters of Mama were secretly hired out by Mama to help track Balden down because she's kind of getting a little bit more antsy with the party, kind of becoming the folk hero that she had been all this time and trying to keep the town under her thumb, even though she's, not playing it like that, very tongue in cheek.
Yeah, they're stealing her spotlight, essentially.
Outwardly, she's like embracing them, and secretly, she's like, you guys are the bane of my existence, please go away. And so then we talked about like, if Balden's captured, like there's going to be a lot of interrogation that's going to have to happen to get to the next level, which is actually the Splintered.
Because he's a recruit.
Yes.
That the Splinters had their eyes on.
For the Splintered, yep. And so, like, you know, it's a matter of, like, if the granddaughters get Baldwin back first, if the party gets him back first, it's almost like we said at the end, it's kind of like a rat race to see who can actually get usable information first to move on to the next level. Yep.
I think we also hinted at the one granddaughter, the more evil-lined one. She wants to, if she can get the information without the party and get Baldwin back without the party, that's really her goal. So she's working a little bit more directly in that, because one-upping the party would be in the best interest for Maymah, whereas the other granddaughter is also there so that if the party's successful, there's still that familiar tie to Maymah that makes Maymah successful as well.
Yes.
So she's hedging her bets at this point with the party.
Pretty much. So let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that they actually do get Baldwin to give up the goods. What are the goods that he gives up?
Yeah, so I don't know that he would divulge that the whole hierarchy thing.
No.
Because I think the Splintered might, similar to the Cracked, I think the Splinter might think that they're in-game. Like or do you think that the Splinter now know that, like, hey, there's a tier structure to this?
I think they definitely know that they're the middleman.
Okay.
I don't know if they know about the Shattered, but I know that they know that they're the middleman. Because we established the Cracked as kind of like the low-level thugs, you know, the gatherers, essentially.
And they don't have long-term plans.
Not necessarily, no, but the Splinter, we knew that the Cracked paid taxes to a group above them.
That they thought they were paying directly to their god.
Correct. Like, they were paying directly to the highest power, and the Splinters are like, you're pretty. No. Yeah, so they know, I think the Splinter definitely know that they're the middleman, and we'll figure out if they know anything about the Shattered or not at some point.
Yep. I think for the sake of the story, Baldwin does not know Maymah's involvement. And so he can't oust her.
No.
Because I still feel it'd be too early for Maymah to be ousted and this to be the story that we're hoping it to be.
Correct.
So I think what he can give away is maybe a store cache, basically, of like stored knowledge of like what was like stuff that the world's missing now that it used to previously have. Maybe like
magic weapons, also maybe like gunpowder for to allow for some more fun character class involvement. Artificers.
And exactly. Artificers are so much fun, and they introduce...
Yeah, they just they take it to another level. It's so much fun. I love artificers.
You gotta have an artificer.
Yes. And so introducing that in these elements, and maybe some stuff that's like, it could even be more technical than that, but maybe it can no longer, just the power ability is still missing within the world. It'd give ability to that artificer a target to aim to if they ever want to get to level 20.
True. I also think that there should be at least 4 points.
Yeah.
Okay, no, take it back. Let's go minimum of 3. And if we go more, then that's fine. But I think minimum of 3 for this arc to be completed. There's got to be at least 3 different points that they have to hit to really shake the Splintered, so to speak, into thinking that there's a problem. If 1 goes down, it's like, okay, they're just a bunch of idiots. You know, if 2 goes down, it's like, okay, maybe something's going on. If 3 hits, like, okay, there's a problem. They have our complete and undivided attention.
Yeah, so I think like there's the info cache.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to call it.
Okay, I like.
So there's the info cache. I think he can also divulge another code name.
Okay.
So remember, we had a code name that
ZQ.
The leader of the Cracked. Yeah, ZQ.
Zulu Quebec. Yep.
And so this means we have to name another thing.
Name.
If you create it, you got to name it.
Yep.
And then maybe a like meeting date, upcoming, because that's just another like major plot point. Like, and if maybe he won't divulge what necessarily happens that day,
and he may not even know. He just knows that there's a meeting.
There's a meeting, and maybe he knows the date and location, but not really the who. I think the location, I don't want to be like this room at this building. I think it's like this cave structure. So, or this old town ruin. So it's like possible for you to even be there and miss it. So there's still going to be some investigation needing done, but I don't know if that's enough. So I want to hear your thoughts.
I had one kind of main thought that was running through my head while you were talking about that. And I do like that. I want to keep that. So what if there's an info cache, what if that is like an abandoned library? Like there's legitimate, like a legitimate info cache. If you have to search like the ruins of like an old museum, library, combination of the two to get the info. And that could have the old writings of the High Elves that would have had some of that written down, or maybe even before the apocalyptic event, some of the humans and the Brasher elves, the dwarves would have had written down, maybe foretelling, or maybe something to that, like kind of a divination type thing that could happen.
And it could be an awesome puzzle experience for like, you now know this is here, but actually to unlock it.
Yes.
Because this would have been protected.
And of course, there has to be some traps that happen, because, you can't just walk into a national treasure and walk out with the Declaration of Independence without, breaking a few eggs. Anyway.
Well, now I got to watch that movie again.
Right. Thanks. I know. Okay. So the first one's the info cache. The second one is the meeting, right? So that's the meeting in the cave that you're talking about. And then the third building is kind of similar to like we had at the end of the Cracked, where like that's where kind of the head honcho of the Splintered is, right? So maybe we learn the name of the head honcho at the second one. So
I like that.
The info cache kind of gives the hierarchy of the entire thing. So like that's where they kind of figure out, okay, this is a long game. This is going to be, if they get to do what they want to do, we are totally in trouble. Like the entire world is in trouble again from the same thing that just happened 400 and some odd years ago.
Yep, because it's like that was really step one, is get to the world to the state. Step two is get their god fully empowered.
Step 2, or step 3, save the cheerleader. Step 4, save the world. In their case, which means
it's really destroy the world.
Exactly. Oops. So then, the second one, the second one is the meeting place. So that's where we figure out this is the head honcho of the Splintered, and we'll have to figure out his name and all of that stuff. And then the third one is when they actually are able to come and have a boss fight.
So since we've said that we're going to have to name them, I think this time instead of because I think like ZQ would be, I think that is probably the connection between the Cracked and
the Splintered.
And ZQ's whole job was to impersonate this god. And so when working with the Cracked, and that can be a channel to finding the head of the Splintered. But I was thinking of the name like Masuel, because I was trying to get away from, I've been caught up in like more lately in my campaign, not necessarily here, but caught up in too much naming of stuff that's tied back to some Western lore that I was reading at the time. So I'm trying to get away from that with this name.
I mean, the fact that you're reading Western lore is awesome. Not a lot of people do that anymore.
I get weird interests.
How do you say that again?
Masuel.
Don't
ask me how I would spell that yet, because I don't.
Ouel.
Yes, we can spell it that way.
Okay.
And I think like with a name like that, it could be, we have so many options of like who that could end up being, like their race and where they're from and like their role here.
MAZQUSUOEL.
Yes, the silent Q. I love it.
Yes. ZQ.
ZQ.
There it is.
Yeah, so Masuel, and there's the connection to it. So then ZQ's not another character, it's the same person. But maybe they could encounter Masuel before they'd even know that Masuel is ZQ.
Yes. Perfect. Brilliant.
So then, love it. So then next time, listeners will talk about, I think, what happens if Mayma got this knowledge first. And then, so that the opposite side of this coin, and we'll hit the next story beat of how this information and events leads to the next layer. Please let us know your thoughts on where that campaign should go. Also, let us know if you would have spelled Masuel differently.
Because
cat's out of the bag now.
Yep.
And just let us know your thoughts on how this campaign's going so far, and give us your thoughts on alignment. You can do that at dungeonmastertalk@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at DMT the podcast. You can also use hashtag Dungeon Master Talk there as well. You can hit us up on Facebook at Dungeon Master Talk Facebook page. And then we are now on Instagram. Super exciting. So you can tag us or you can directly DM us. We are at DMT the podcast on Instagram. So we'd love to hear from you there as well. We're playing around, still learning Instagram for ourselves. So please bear with us on our early posts as I work to get better at that.
You can also hit us up on the YouTube comments as well when those videos post as well. So don't be shy. We love to try and talk to you on all platforms. So as you can tell, we don't get chatty Cathy at all when it comes to recording this podcast. And because we have opinions about everything, both D&D and non-D&D related, we would just love to talk to you about that. Before we go, we do have a game update, and we will do that right now. So we actually just finished up session 27 for my group, which I was flabbergasted by. Just the fact that we've been able to play for roughly 2.5 years now, call it. Something like that. Yeah, like 2.5 years. But anyway, so last we had left off, they were in a dungeon and they'd found a deep gnome called Rook Glitterstone, who had given them some information about some stuff beneath even where they were in that particular dungeon. And so the party decided to follow Rook down there. One of the clerics, however, had been sleeping through the last 2 sessions. So we started off with them rejoining the party, if you want to call it that. They went exploring, trying to find where everybody was, and then was led mysteriously by a voice, how those mystical powers can be, was led by a voice down to the same area that the party was. So I shouldn't say the big group, but like the majority at that point, so that would have been the barbarian, the rogue, the elf cleric, and the warlock, were all together. They were licking their wounds after getting in a fight with some hill giants. And meanwhile, our sorcerer and our fighter were in a different room. The sorcerer was unconscious, and the fighter was trying to find the rest of the party so that he could be healed. So, long story short, they ended up finding a connecting hallway. The fighter and the sorcerer did, and the fighter drugged the sorcerer into the room with the majority of the group. The group didn't know if it was friend or foe, so they stabbed first and got the fighter. And so, yeah, there was that. And then after that, the cleric who was lost was then found. He kind of stumbled his way into where the group was. They had a little reunion of, hey, where you been? And why weren't you with us? So after that, the party noticed a mysterious purple mist that was coming through one of the sidewalls in the room that they were in. So the sorcerer went down and poked around a little bit and dropped a fireball on 2 guards that were just standing there, innocent bystanders, dealt some pretty good damage to them. And then as he comes back to the group, he's like, oh, it's nothing down there, it's just a couple of guys just standing there, we'll take them out. So him and the fighter, who had kind of developed this tag team thing going on, they went back down there only to realize that the 2 guys were joined by 2 earth elementals. And having been low on health to start the thing, the fighter was basically knocked prone, like unconscious, pretty shortly thereafter. The sorcerer treated very quickly to get the rest of the party. The rest of the party came down, and the rest of the night was the ensuing fight of the earth elementals and the party. So that is where we left off in the adventure. So we look forward to our next episode in May, and we'll see if they keep going down this rabbit trail or if they go back to the hallway they were in and do some other exploring in that direction. So we will see what they come up with next time. So that happened.
Oh, I cannot believe that your character did that, Shea.
Well, first of all, if
I also cannot believe that once again, Kyle didn't have an update. What gives? We said he would. So that's a thing.
So two things. Number one, if I have a PC in my own game, I need to quit being a DM. Number two, I just need to teach Kyle how to hit the record button when I'm not on the other side of the video camera. And number three, I'm still training him, guys. It's fine. We'll get in there. And I know I enjoy listening to the note recordings. So if nothing else, I will give you the update when I hear it, assuming I get it in time.
I do think the listeners are up to date with what I've recorded, like what I've done in real life up to the point of this recording. It's a 85% chance that I will have a session before you guys listen to this again, listeners. And if that's the case, then my comment about not having an update in here may be false. And you can make fun of me at DMT the podcast.
Thanks for spending your time with us this week. We truly appreciate you being here with us. As we say all the time, seriously, the fact that you guys download and listen to this is just truly remarkable. We thank you so much for your support and just the downloads and the comments. Just super appreciate that. For all of us here at Dungeon Master Talk, I am Shea.
And I'm Kyle.
And we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Peace.